Today we're giving this old tabletop new life by giving it new legs and making it mobile. This tabletop was salvaged from a table that I built some 20 years ago. I've stained and refinished it, and now we want to turn it into a craft table for my wife. The underside is a bit of a mess. It got chewed up because there used to be something glued on here that I ripped off when I was salvaging the table, but this is on the bottom. Nobody's going to see that. You know, the top is what matters, and that looks fine. Your typical dining table is about 30 inches high. That's good for sitting at. This is going to be a work table, something you stand at, so we're making it 36 inches high, which is, you know, the same height as this work table, because it's a good working height for when you're standing. And it's going to be on wheels so that we can move it around. The one thing I need to remember is that your standard household doorway is like only 30 inches wide. And if I make this table into something 36 inches tall, and it's this wide, it's going to be really tough to get it through a doorway, so I need to make the base knockdown so I can assemble it in the room and take it apart again if we ever leave that room. For the legs and the understructure, I've got this 2x10 that's left over from when I built my son's bed about a year ago, and then I got some 2x4s. I'm going to try to make this out of just wood that I have laying around, and I think the spruce should be fine. And so now we need to do a little bit of workshop math. I want a table that's 36 inches high. The thickness of the top is 3/4 of an inch. And these casters are 2.5 inches tall. And now you've got something 3 1/4, and you got to take that away from the 36, 32 3/4 inch legs. Or, you know, I'm just going to call them 33. So I want a 33-inch tall leg, and I also want them to be about 3x3, at least by the top. I'll narrow them down at the bottom. So out of this 2x10, I can cut, say, 67. That'll give me enough for 3 of the legs. And then I'll have to cut the other 2 out of some 2x4s and glue them up. So let's get doing on that. 2x10 is too big for my miter saw, so I'm just going to cut them all by hand. So I've got these 8 pieces to make up the legs, and I got these long cross pieces and the short cross pieces. These I need to plane down and glue up. These I just want to plane and a little bit just to straighten them out. This one 2x4 is kind of dirty and beat up, and I don't want any dirt to damage my blade, so I'm going to first hit it with the sandpaper before I put it across the joiner. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of legs to glue together, and I'm going to try to just do that in one clamping setup. Keep old gift cards or credit cards, and you can use them for spreading glue. And that's that for a few hours. And with them out of clamps, I'm going to go back to the joiner to square them up again. And yeah, a couple of glue ups have really big lips, so I'm going to use the table saw to square them up. I put in my ripping blade, so I should get a nice cut out of that, and that'll just be quicker than going repeatedly through the planer. So I was aiming for 3x3, and I actually got close to that, just a little bit under 2 7/8. So I'm next going to clean up the ends and then trim them to the 33 finished length. So the legs are now cut to size, but they're kind of chunky, so I want to taper them down. I'm going to taper them on the 2 inside faces, but the limiting factor is these wheels because they need to fit on the bottom. You know, they are just a bit more than 2 inches at their widest. I'm going to call it 2 1/8, so I can taper this down to 2 1/8 at the bottom. And so this is a good time to inspect the boards and look for any blemishes. Like here, there's one spot where it's just a little bit thin, so I'm going to mark that with the tape, and I'm going to make sure that that's removed when I taper it. Here, there's a knot at the bottom. Here, there's a nice looking knot, so I've got that marked. I want to make sure these are all on the inside faces that are tapered. I'll just give them a little scribble so I'm sure that that's the part that I want to remove. And then I'll mark 2 1/8 down at the bottom. At the top, I think I'm going to leave 7 inches. Need a longer straight edge, and I will connect the lines. I've never gotten around to making a tapering jig. When I cut tapers, I usually just freehand them on the bandsaw. It's pretty straight, and then I clean it up either with my hand plane or on the belt sander. Quick change of plans. I changed my mind on this one. What I did, I got my block plane, and I used the block plane to take down the ridge up at the top here where the blade broke out. And then I used my jointer to just run over the whole thing, and that took care of it really nice and quickly and gave a really good finish. So with the legs cut to size and tapered, I brought the tabletop back in, and I've got it mocked up here upside down as I'm going to plan out the joinery, which is next. So it turned out I couldn't use the 2x10 here for the end. There's some nasty splits in it, so I would have had to cut it off really short. So off camera, I went into my stash and I found some junky bits of ash, and I've prepared that, and those are going to be used here on the ends. Now remember, this needs to be a knockdown base. So what I'm going to do is the legs are going to be permanently attached to the long pieces, and these are going to be bolted into place once it's in the room. So for my knockdown hardware, I went through my container of random bolts, and I managed to find 8, which should make the job work. I'll be putting 2 of them right through there. Now this is just an aesthetic decision, but I'm finding these boards a bit thick. So I've set a stop block on my crosscut sled here, and I'm going to hog out about a 1/4 inch or so of material to make a nice rabbet where this will notch around the leg. And then that notch will fit nicely like that. And since I'm going to be putting bolts here, I can't put any steel through the leg this way, so I'm going to attach this with glue and dowels here. I'm going to have some fun taking advantage of the versatility of my Dowel Max jig, and I'm going to make 3 rows of dowel holes. I'm going to start with this spacer in the jig, and that will put in 2 dowels here near the edge, and then I will open it up and add another spacer. Then I will do another row, another dowel hole, this one in the middle. Then I will open it up. Both of these come out, and I open the jig really wide, put in the super big spacer, plus a couple of 1/8 inch spacers. So now the jig is going to look like that. And then I will put in 2 more dowels here. And now for the legs, we want to clamp from the side, so we reconfigure the jig by taking this clamp off here and then put them on the side. This goes back on, and then these knobs go back on. And now we clamp from the side. And then I'll do a little test fit to make sure everything lines up. Before I proceed with gluing. Now if you don't have one of those jigs, or if you think it's just too much fussing, you could just glue these together and then drill through and pound in some dowels with glue. They'll just be showing through from the surface. But you know, again, there's many ways to do things in woodworking. You don't have to do it just this one way. Pop a little glue in each hole, and then I will smear it around with a toothpick to make sure it's well coated on the sides. These dowels have grooves along the side that gives a place for the glue to go, so it gives a good adhesion. And then the other holes. These holes are deeper in the legs because this wood is thinner, so these are 2-inch dowels that I'm putting in. This is the point where I figure out if it's trying to do both joints at once is a mistake. I think there was maybe even too much glue because I had to really squeeze. But then at the end, with a couple of clamps on there, it just started to flow out nicely. Normally I don't mind my small shop, but with a big project like this, I don't really have enough space for everything. And with this table, I don't actually have a big enough table that is flat and square to assemble the legs, except for the table itself. So I'm bringing this back in here. And I know some of you have probably noticed how much taller these end pieces are, and I freely admit it looks kind of weird here. I just wanted to have plenty of space for these bolts to fasten on, and so they could provide a nice wide grip to the leg. But I will definitely round this off. That's better. So next I need to drill the holes here, but I know nobody's perfect, so they're probably not going to be perfectly in the same spot. So I want to make sure I mark them, so I always end up putting the same piece together. A matches with A, B matches with B. When they're together, that'll cover it up, so it doesn't matter. My bolts are not quite long enough, so I need to drill countersinks at the drill press so that I have a place for the head of the bolt to go. Now, unfortunately, these leg assemblies are way too big to fit under my drill press, so I have to drill them by hand. Now, one mistake I see now is that the lower bolts are just a bit too close to the side for my big washers. I'll either have to do without washers or modify the washers. So they're all just finger tight, but there we go. One understructure basically complete. So now it's time for some finishing touches. I'm going to use these clips for fastening the structure to the table, and to do that I'm going to use my biscuit joiner to cut a series of slots all around the table. Then there was a lot of rounding over and sanding that took place. It was my wife's request to make stopped roundovers on the legs so they don't go all the way to the top. I applied a water-based polyurethane, and then you sand in between coats. I'm going to do 3 coats in total probably. Now let's get these wheels installed. Really the L-shaped bracket was actually what I uniquely wanted, so I could attach that here on the edge of the leg, and it's got a fairly narrow base for mounting. Now I see I could have actually made the legs that much narrower if I was willing to make them rectangular instead of square. You know, I'll have links to these down below if you're interested. These wheels have like 5 different places where you can put in a screw, which I think is kind of excessive. I think I'm just planning to put 3 on the side. And now let's get it put together. And so there we are, one nice mobile table. It is at a 36-inch working height. We can move it anywhere we want in my wife's craft room. And the most important feature, one I don't even think I've mentioned until now, is that it straddles the guest bed, so we can make double use of space. All right guys, that's it for this one. As always, thanks for stopping by. I hope you found something interesting and enjoyable, and we'll see you on the next one.